Assalamu alaikum everyone. Welcome to another episode of Trade Talk series, a PSW podcast series. Our PSW podcast series is being produced in collaboration with Sustainable Development Policy Institute and PSW. The aim of this podcast is to reflect on the issues related to trade ecosystem, transit trade, and the cross-border trade. I am Abdullah Khalid, Project Coordinator at Sustainable Development Policy Institute and the host of today's episode. Today, we'll be talking about e commerce ecosystem, a perspective from Pakistan. Uh, it has been observed that the e commerce provides support to entrepreneurs to to overcome the usual trade channels to reach the global market. It has been observed, it has been highlighted in the research that the micro, small, and medium enterprises, MSMEs, who are using digital platforms are five times more likely to export than those in the traditional economy. The cost related to the geographic distance declines when it comes to those exporters who are using the digital trading platforms. It also has significant gains for the medium and small enterprises, especially the woman led enterprises who are able to go global because of the e commerce platforms. Pakistan has great opportunity and a potential to contribute to the e commerce ecosystem and also to add on to the GDP of the country. But there are challenges prevailing in the current e commerce ecosystem. To discuss these challenges and opportunities regarding the e commerce ecosystem, we have been joined today by Mr. Faisal Sohail Butt, who is an expert of e commerce policy and ecosystem, who has been associated with the government of Pakistan and the private sector for the last 8 years. Prior to that, he has a good 2 decade experience of e-commerce, trade, women economic empowerment, institutional and human capacity building. So we are thankful to Mr. Faisal Sohail Butt, who has spared time for us today. Thank you for joining us, Faisal Saab. For today's topic, e-commerce ecosystem perspective from Pakistan, a pool of questions for you. So we'll start off with a little, if we can go back in COVID, when the world was hit badly by COVID. It had impacted health, the economy of not just the developed and the underdeveloped countries, but for Pakistan, particularly the e-commerce companies, it turned out to be a winner. If we look into the statistics, uh, Pakistan was ranked as the 37th largest e-commerce market with a potential of 5.9 billion US dollars in 2021. So, if you could highlight on the overall e-commerce ecosystem in Pakistan, what challenges and opportunities do we have?
First of all, thank you for having me. Yes, absolutely. COVID gave impetus to the global digitalization drive, and it had a similar effect in Pakistan also. To look at the e commerce ecosystem in the country, first let's have a look at the data. Over the last 2 financial years, the growth in e commerce transactions by volume has been over 100%, and the growth in e commerce transactions by value has been over 70%. And these figures only reflect the documented e-commerce transactions, meaning those transactions that were conducted via debit, Visa card, or through any wallet. It does not reflect those e-commerce transactions which were conducted over based on cash on delivery (COD). And State Bank estimates that 60% of e-commerce transactions are COD, and the private sector estimates, especially online retailers, that 90% of e-commerce is conducted over cash. So if we extrapolate, accounting for the undocumented e-commerce transactions, it's safe to say that the size of the e-commerce market size in Pakistan right now is between 350 to 400 billion rupees. Another figure which another data point is the number of increasing e-commerce merchants which are registered with banks. This figure has now crossed 5,900, but this figure also only reflects those e-commerce merchants which have registered with banks under the e-commerce category. We do know that there is a tremendous amount of online sellers which are on selling on Facebook Marketplace, on Instagram, and or selling through online marketplaces such as Daraz and Foodpanda. These e-commerce merchants are not necessarily registered with banks, so the size of the market has grown tremendously, and the number of uh, businesses which are now using the online platform is also increasing tremendously. Another data that indicates the confidence and trust of the international community in Pakistan's ecosystem is the fact that during 21 and 22, uh, the e-commerce reflected the majority of the investment that landed in Pakistan. It was in e-commerce startups. Uh, we can say that four key components of the ecosystem have attributed to this growth in Pakistan. It is the increasing access to the internet and smartphones, improvements in the logistics services, especially in Tier 1 cities, and the emergence of new players in this sector, improving access to digital financial solutions, and lastly, a tech savvy young population. In terms of challenges, one of the challenges in e-commerce is the preference of both buyers and sellers to make cash payments and to receive cash payments. This does not allow us to document the e-commerce market size. Secondly, it causes cash flow challenges, especially for micro and small businesses. The second challenge is scaling e-commerce in tier 2 cities and in rural areas of Pakistan. And lastly, I would say that improving consumer confidence in e-commerce is a challenge that needs to be addressed.
Thank you, Faisal, for insights into the e-commerce ecosystem, what opportunities we have, and how we can move forward on this. Now, let's move a step forward and see that how e-commerce has improved the global economy, and it no doubt it had played a very pivotal role in contributing to the economies of not just developed but also underdeveloped countries. But if we look on the side of the adoption of e-commerce systems, there are multiple barriers, like cognitive aspects. If we look into the lack of awareness and information and complex legal procedures, which also includes the political and the economic factors which have hampered the progress of the e-commerce industry. So, keeping in view these barriers, how do you think how do you think the e-commerce trade ecosystem could be enhanced in Pakistan?
Uh, yes, the number of credit debit card users in the country is not as high as we would like, but they are steadily increasing, and we've also seen emergence of microfinance banks, and they are also sort of serving the unbanked populations. But we do have to realize that there is a preference in the market for cash. But in terms of procedures, a number of legal procedures have been streamlined to facilitate e-commerce. To state a few, prior to January 2021, there was no formal customs procedure to facilitate e-commerce exports in Pakistan. So the B2C e-commerce exports framework was introduced in January 2021, which enables an exporter to observe, be compliant to formal custom procedures, and to help micro and small businesses. Uh, the uh, the process was made simpler by uh, passing the burden of filing the goods declaration to the courier company. So if you're an e-commerce exporter, you just need to take your one-time registration with the bank under the category of e-commerce exporter, and then whenever you receive an order from abroad, you have to go to your courier partner and give the parcel. The courier partner will submit the goods declaration and fulfill all custom procedures on your behalf. This SRO was introduced in January 2021, and during the last 2 years, 2021 compared to 2022, the growth has been over 145%. And In total, the exports recorded under this SRO has been about $25 million. Another framework which was also introduced to facilitate sales through international online marketplaces such as Amazon was the B2B2C e-commerce exports framework, business to business to consumer exports framework. Um, Furthermore, to you talked about the unbanked economy. One of the great initiatives that State Bank took was making it mandatory for all commercial banks to offer digital uh, customer and merchant onboarding. So now, from the comfort of your home on a smartphone, you can open your bank account. Uh, Another initiative which was in favor of freelancers was that prior to January 2020, yes, 2020, freelancers could only remit up to $5,000 per month into Pakistan. That figure has been taken up to $25,000. Pakistan's single window is a prime example of digitalizing and simplifying export and import procedures. I personally believe that the reform process of digitalizing public administration procedures has kicked off, and it's just a matter of time before all government-related procedures uh, we will be able to conduct them over a smartphone. Yes, lack of awareness is an issue, and I feel that perhaps instead of using mainstream media, I we do know we can see that nearly all government entities do have websites which are updated regularly. I think we now need to develop strategies to start using social media, especially to reach out to Pakistan's youth. I think social media is a better tool to inform the public about different initiatives, different reforms uh, that the government has taken, which has created opportunities for anyone who has entrepreneurial ambitions in e-commerce.
Thank you, Faisal Saab. Indeed, social media plays a very pivotal role when it comes to increasing the awareness of the masses overall, particularly the exporters. Moving forward, when we talk about the challenges faced by the e-commerce industry in Pakistan, it ranges in different parts. Especially, it's the lack of the trust by the consumer, particularly whether in the product or the payment method to a reliable payment mechanism. If we talk about the cash on the delivery that you recently, just in the previous comment, also highlighted, the payment method which slows down the economic activity. And if we look into the logistic network that exists in Pakistan that is being utilized by the e-commerce, it's flawed, which has been hampering the economic activity overall when it comes to the contribution from the e-commerce side. So, what steps or the policy interventions do you think are required and are necessary to boost the e-commerce ecosystem, particularly the industry?
Let's take those step by step. So, in terms of consumer confidence in e-commerce, consumer protection is a provincial subject. Uh, all provinces in Pakistan do have consumer protection acts, so we need to amend them to cater to e-commerce disputes. Having said that, the Consumer Protection Act in Punjab is already catering to e-commerce disputes. Uh, KP has made necessary amendments to cater to e-commerce disputes. So we need to ensure that the remaining provinces also amend their act so that e-commerce disputes are catered to. Furthermore, it's important to realize that the cost of transaction uh, uh, is low when we're talking about e-commerce transactions. So the cost of dispute resolution has to also be, has to justify. It can't be very high. So customers should have online tools available to file their disputes, and that is something also that we've seen that in Punjab, customers are able to file their disputes online through a website, and I do believe that they're also making a mobile application. uh, but more importantly, since like I said that the value of the transaction in e-commerce is generally low, and the international best practice is that the uh, e-commerce merchant or the online marketplace, they need to establish return policies and need to have their own dispute resolution mechanisms. The e-commerce policy that was reduced in October 2019 has a code of conduct which uh, also sort of guides and advises e-commerce merchants to have return policies and to have efficient dispute resolution mechanisms in place. The electronic payment service providers have acquired state bank licenses and are very safe and reliable. uh, and we do see that now a lot of these commercial banks and financial institutions do broadcast messages to educate public about on how to protect their financial information. However, one of the main bottlenecks in the conventional economy and even in e-commerce is the parallel economy that operates solely on cash. And the when we're talking about e-commerce, when you're talking about electronic transactions, one thing that automatically happens is that a business sale, its transactions are now being documented. So it is understandable that why businesses would not perhaps adopt digital solutions. So we need to address the concerns micro businesses, SMEs have. Uh, we do know that the taxation system can have uh, administrative costs, compliance costs. So we need to rationalize those also, especially for women-based home workers, micro businesses. So that's we have to look at that. In terms of the financials payment solutions for cross-border payments, uh, we often ask, when is PayPal coming to Pakistan? PayPal or Alipay has the potential to benefit Pakistani e-commerce businesses and freelancers, but entering the Pakistani market is a corporate decision. Um, as far as Pakistan's current payment landscape is concerned, Visa and Mastercards are already available in the country to make domestic and cross-border payments. Branchless banks are offering services domestically. Hyperwallet, which is a sister concern of PayPal, is right now enabling Pakistani sellers on Amazon to remit their proceeds into Pakistan, and Payoneer is facilitating freelancers to remit their proceeds, their international proceeds. Uh, Logistical connectivity in tier 1 cities is functional, and the emergence of new players in this arena is improving service delivery. However, yes, in tier 2 cities and in rural areas, we need to improve the logistical connectivity. And I personally feel that Pakistan Post has can play a crucial role, since it has a nationwide presence, and in terms of first mile delivery and last mile delivery, I think their infrastructure is in place, but their track and trace capabilities need to be at par with the private sector.
Thank you for your valuable suggestions. Now, being an e-commerce expert and being associated with the government of Pakistan in different capacities for the last 8 years, so Faisal Saab, how do you see the e-commerce policy that was brought by the government of Pakistan in 2019? It has been observed that there are many hurdles and many obstacles they have been facing when it comes to uplifting the e-commerce and the e-business in Pakistan. So, being an e commerce expert, what policy interventions are required by the government to enhance the e commerce and the e business in Pakistan? And how do you think the current government can act as a booster when it comes to this certain policy?
The National E-commerce Policy Framework 2019, uh, under it, the major reforms, the policy that targets at itself, it's set for itself, have been achieved, and the growth in domestic and cross-border e-commerce data indicators speak for itself. Uh, for example, in 2018, Forbes magazine ranked Pakistan as the fourth fastest freelancer population. In 2021, Pakistan became the third largest supplier of online labor in the world. Uh, we gained access to Amazon added Pakistan on its seller list in May 2021, and as of August 2022, we have 6,000 Pakistani businesses on Amazon that have done sales of over $20 million. Uh, Last year, there was a news that Amazon had blocked 13,000 Pakistani accounts. I would like to make it clear that this news was absolutely untrue. When the news started circulating in the media, we reached out to Amazon via our trade minister in the US, and they confirmed that uh, Amazon had not taken any specific action against Pakistani accounts. So this information was absolutely untrue. In fact, they shared their satisfaction and encouraged more Pakistanis to businesses to join Amazon. In the You asked about what sort of interventions the government can take now. I feel that in the domestic setting, we need to promote and scale e-commerce in tier 2 cities and in rural areas, and for that we need to equip people in these parts with digital skills, improve availability of logistical services in these parts. We need to focus on improving the consumer confidence by making necessary amendments in the Consumer Protection Acts, and also ensuring that there is a harmony across uh, these Consumer Protection Acts across the provinces. Uh, and we also need to encourage online merchants to have return policies and to follow international best practices when they're establishing their web stores or when they're dealing with clients online. To promote cross-border e-commerce, so far we've onboarded Pakistani sellers on Amazon, on JD.com, which is the second largest online marketplace in China. We need to help our e-commerce exporters to be able to join other international online marketplaces, and uh, uh, international logistics costs are very high, so we also need to reduce them, and international warehousing can also be a challenge. So logistically, we need to focus on reducing the cost of international shipments and providing warehouse facilities. Uh, and uh, if you look at the e-commerce exports data, we can see that majority of the e-commerce exports are consist of ladies eastern wear. So we need to, I think there's an opportunity that we can diversify our export e-commerce export portfolio, and the export destination is also a few countries represent majority of the export destination. So we need to diversify our e-commerce products that we are exporting, and also touch other international destinations. uh, the digital economy is evolving, and it's only through continued public private collaboration that the emerging challenges can be reformed through making cogent regulatory reforms.
Thank you, Faisal, for providing a very detailed pathway how the government can play a vital role in improving the e-commerce ecosystem. So the point that you've just highlighted on how the woman-led enterprises are performing in the e-commerce systems. So if we talk about Pakistan single window, so Pakistan single window has been contributing a lot when it comes to transforming the trade landscape of Pakistan. So PSW has recently launched a program that is defined only for the women by the name of Khatija program, which specifically aims on revamping the whole business ecosystem by providing them a detailed capacity building modules with detailed modules of financial inclusion, social media marketing strategies that are quite required for elevating the e-commerce businesses. So, how do you see that PSW's this initiative, particularly the Khatija initiative, can help in revamping the e-commerce ecosystem, and how women can be an integral part of the overall e-commerce?
I had the pleasure of attending Pakistan Single Windows Khatija program in Karachi, and I was impressed with the efforts the team is making in imparting skills necessary or knowledge necessary to engage in formal uh, cross-border trade. Women do have a very strong influence on e-commerce. We do know that uh, the State Bank's payment system review report shows that even though women have less ownership of credit and debit cards compared to men, however, the latest State Bank data reports indicates that uh, out of the total female spending on using cards, 4.4% is on e-commerce, whereas comparatively men who have higher ownership of credit cards only spend 2.5% on e-commerce. So we can see that women are more likely to use their cards on e-commerce transactions. Uh, Fashion and textile sectors are one of the leading categories in e-commerce. So women do have a strong influence as far as the e-commerce ecosystem or the market is concerned. Uh, you see, mobility is one of the leading challenge that prohibits women from entering the conventional economy. E-commerce sort of reduces or removes this barrier. Uh, E-commerce allows women, micro businesses to engage in the market, to participate in the market digitally. It reduces the cost, which in the conventional market to establish brick and mortar stores, that cost is usually very high, and comparatively, establishing a web store is much cheaper. So, by removing this barrier of mobility, e-commerce can tremendously benefit women entrepreneurs. Uh, we do know that a lot of times women entrepreneurs do get orders online from international buyers, but uh, then they lack the information and know-how of how they can actually send that product abroad, and when they receive the payment, they receive it through the proper channels. So Pakistan's single window in this regard can play a very critical role by ensuring that the interface of Pakistan's single window and women entrepreneurs is user friendly, which it is, and through the Khatija program, if they are continuing to inform women entrepreneurs all across the country about the PSW system, and how they can engage in formal uh, cross border trade.
Mr. Faisal, on behalf of PSW and SDPI, I'd like to thank you for spending your time, sharing your thoughts and opinion on improving the e-commerce ecosystem in Pakistan. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone for joining us today for another very exciting edition of PSW podcast. Stay tuned. We'll be back. Thank you.